Hello, my name is Delaney Goodman, third grade teacher for math, science, and social studies at Woodward Mill Elementary School. This will be my fourth year teaching at the elementary school level. However, I have done extensive research on instructional choice at all grade level bands. This professional development is intended for all K-12 teachers who are currently teaching in the classroom. The purpose of this session is to engage all K-12 educators in learning about and constructing opportunities for instructional choice within their classrooms. The objective for today's lesson is that participants will be able to construct across and within activity choices for a unit of study for their particular grade level and subject.
Today's professional
Following the
development
work
is a
time, you will have time
3-hour
to work
PD
collaboratively
all
or
about
independently to
instructional
create
choice.
a rap or a
We will begin our
song
session today
about
by playing
instructional
two
choice
separate
and how it can be
games
implemented
and then
in our
reflecting
classrooms.
on
We will
those
then
games
have about
and making
15
a
minutes of
connection
time
to
where
the
we present those
struggle
raps or
that it
songs to
is
the
trying
rest
to get
of the
students
group.
to do what we
We
want
will
them
then
to
move
do
into
ultimately.
another work time where
I
I
will
provide
then
a
move
step-by-step
into about a
process
25-minute
for implementing
segment where I'm
instructional choice
explaining
in the
what
classroom.
instructional choice
We will
is,
only
some
engage
examples
in
of
steps
instructional
1 through
choice,
3
who
during this
benefits
session
from
today.
that strategy,
The rest of the
and
the
steps
connection
will
between
be
low
implemented
intensity
on your own
strategies
time.
and tier 2
We will
students.
have about
Following this, we will
15
watch
minutes
an
to work
iris
with step
or an
2
iris
and
step
step 3,
video that provides
and only
us
about
with an
2 minutes to
exemplar
work with
versus
step
a
1 as it
non-exemplar
does not
of what
require
instructional
or choice
we will
strategies look
then
like in the classroom.
move
To
into our
provide
closing
the
and final
participants
thoughts
with a
where we
more
will do a
hands-on
reflection.
approach, we will
add
engage
to
in
a
a work
Mentimeter
session.
that we began
So
in
for
the
about
beginning
10
of this
minutes,
session.
I'm going to explain the
We will
difference
consider
between
our
a cross
takeaways,
activity
and
and
within
then
activity
we will
instructional
talk about
choice.
next
You will
steps
then
in the
have about
classroom.
15
I
minutes
look
to work
forward
with
to
each
a
type
great session
of
with you
instructional
all.
choice.
It is very packed, so we
And
do
make
have to stay
it
on
based
schedule.
on a unit
However,
that
it
you
will
teach.
be very beneficial.
You will have
for
the
you,
opportunity
and I
to
hope
create
that by
different
the end of this, you
choices
feel more
for a
confident about
unit
implementing
within your
instructional choice
content
in your
area that you
classroom.
teach. I will then conclude the work session Following
by
the work
talking
time,
about
you will have
the
time to work
different
collaboratively
barriers
or independently
and
to
the
create a rap or a
effectiveness of
song
implementation in the
about
classroom.
instructional choice.
During this game, we are going to play sit or stand. I'm going to present you with some scenarios, and you are either going to stand up for yes, I do like doing that, or no, you're going to sit down for I do not like doing that. So let's start with this one. Doing paperwork. Stand up if you do like doing paperwork. Stay seated if you do not. During this game, we are going to play sit or stand. I'm going to present you with some scenarios, and you are either going to stand up for yes, I do like doing that, or no, you're going to sit down for I do not like doing that. So let's start with this one. Doing paperwork. Stand up if you do like doing paperwork. Stay seated if you do not. Please sit down if you do not like doing graded writing assignments, and stand up if you do like grading writing assignments. Now for a fan favorite. If you enjoy going to meetings, please stand up. If you do not enjoy going to meetings, please sit down. Now, this one is a bit controversial. Do you like making plans, whether that be making plans for your entire grade level, whether that be making plans for your small group? Do you enjoy making plans for your teaching? For yes, stand up. For no, sit down. Here is another controversial topic. Do you enjoy communicating with parents? For yes, stand up. No, sit down. Here is one that I feel educators either really love or they really, really hate. I think it depends on whether or not one defines themselves as creative or not. Do you enjoy creating hallway displays? Stand up for yes, sit down for absolutely not. What about cutting lamination? You know, when you have stations and you laminate them, and now it's to the part where you have to cut it out and get them prepared. If you enjoy that, please stand up. If you absolutely do not enjoy that, please sit down. Here is another fan favorite. If you enjoy posting your learning targets, please stand up. If you find it absolutely pointless and do not want to post your learning targets, please sit down. All right, now for your last yes or no, we are going to talk about doing endorsements, whether this be gifted endorsement, ESOL endorsement, reading endorsement. If you enjoy doing endorsement classes, stand up. If you do not enjoy them, please sit down. Now, I want you to consider this. I asked you either yes or no for all of the following scenarios. But what I didn't do is I didn't provide you choices. I didn't ask you if you would want to do it in this scenario or if you would not want to do it in this scenario. I just provided you with a general situation and you had to determine whether or not you would enjoy that scenario. Now I want you to think about this. For the ones that you said no for, would it make a difference if you had a choice of how you did it, of when you did it, where you did it, or in which order you did it? Would that make the difference for you? Or would your answer still be, absolutely not, I do not enjoy it, I would not want to do it? Would your answer change? Now let's play a game of Would You Rather. This time, I'm not asking you if you would enjoy this. Now I'm asking you which one you would enjoy more, or which one would you hate doing the least. So, when we play this game, you're going to see two different sides of the screen. It's going to be your two different options. You are either going to go to the left side of the room, or you are going to go to the right side of the room. So let's begin with this. Would you rather do paperwork on your couch, left side, or at your desk, right side? Would you rather grade tests with a pen, left side, or with a scented marker, right side? Would you rather grade those lengthy writing assignments at home in comfy clothes, left side, or during your planning time at school, right side? Would you rather attend meetings during your planning time at school, or would you rather have a late day every week where you have meetings? Would you rather make plans for what you teach during school hours, left side, or outside of school hours, right side? Would you rather communicate with parents through making phone calls, left side, or through texting or emailing, right side? Would you rather decorate hallway displays before school, left side, or after school, right side? Would you rather cut lamination in silence, left side, or with music, right side? Would you rather post learning targets for the day's lesson by handwriting them, left side, or by printing them out on a piece of paper, right side? All right, last one that I want you to consider. If you had to do an endorsement class, would you prefer for the endorsement class to be in person, left side, or online, right side? Since you've had time to take a deep dive into the task that you as a teacher might have to do on a daily basis that you might not want to do, and you had a chance to look at some scenarios where students don't want to engage in a task, I want you to think of the following question. How did having choices of when, where, or how to do the task change your mind? How might these options of when, where, or how to do a task change the minds of students? You are going to think about this, and then you are going to pair up with the person beside you, and you are going to create a song or a rap about how this changed your mind or how this changed your perspective of the task or how we might convince students to engage in a task by offering them choices. Now that we've taken time to get to know a little bit about each other,
You better actually pay me my pocket money this week.
how this session or
This is what $50
preferences,
at least.
when is a task that we have to do on a daily basis,
to
complete an assignment, to think
What did you
about a
do
time in that
So
scenario. How did
unfair.
you address this situation?
How am I
When you
supposed to know where the
struggle to get a
forks go?
student to complete a task, or to follow a direction, reflect, or to play nice, think about a time, have a discussion
come
where
here.
you tried everything you
When
could
is a
think
time
of
to
to
teach
get
a
a child to get a student
on
that
board
they need
to
to
complete
do
an assignment
that they won't do?
What did you
I'm
do
going to play you two
in that
videos,
scenario?
and I
How
want you
did
to
you
think about
address
This one's
this
still got
relationship
water in it.
experience. Be
I'll just
ready
put
to
it away like
simply
that.
watch the
I knew
videos,
it.
table
I
some
knew
time
it.
to discuss
That's all
experiences
right.
that you might have had,
I want you to
or
turn and
different
have a
ways that
discussion with
you've
your
dealt
table.
with these experiences.
When is a time?
Now, I want you to watch this funny video that I found.
I said no.
How would you have managed this scenario? What would you have done in this situation if one of your students presented this challenge in your class?
said no.
Be ready to turn and talk and share ideas about how you might have handled this situation. When a student is asked to engage in something that they don't want to do, or a non preferred activity, they can and most likely do feel the same way that you felt when we were doing our task earlier. If it's something you want to do, great. But if it's something that you don't want to do, sometimes you have a bad attitude about it. You say no, that you're not going to. And in these situations, there are strategies that you can use to get students on board to complete the non preferred task, just like we did at the very beginning of this professional development. A strategy that you can use to get students to engage in non preferred tasks is called instructional choice. What is instructional choice? Instructional choice is when you offer two or more options to students and you allow them to select the option they want independently of your opinion and then facilitate the selected option for the student. So I want you to think back to your own practice. What are some examples of instructional strategies that you have used in your classroom? Or maybe you haven't used them, but you know of these instructional choices and you could use them. You're going to think with your group and you're going to come up with 5 different words for instructional strategies that you can use. Once you've come up with these 5 words, you're going to scan the QR code or you're going to go to the website for Mentimeter, and you are going to put those words into our word cloud. We are going to be able to reference this back when we need to come up with ideas for instructional choices. This will just be a place where we can gather kind of all of our thoughts that we can reference back throughout the professional development session. When considering which students would benefit from instructional choices, it is evident that this is something that would benefit all students. All students will benefit from being provided options, which gives them more of a voice in the classroom. However, if we look at our responsiveness to intervention chart, we can see that there are 3 different tiers, and most of you are probably pretty familiar with this. But those at tier 1 that's about 80 to 85% of students who are progressing sufficiently with the research-based practices that are already in the classroom, those everyday actions that teachers are taking, and providing to all students. So this is just the daily instruction that you engage in. 80 to 85% of students are performing sufficiently at that stage. However, there are those students who need a little bit of a push. Those are our tier 2 students, where there's about 10 to 15% of students who need tier 2 supports. So tier 2 supports are those students who, one, require a little additional support, which can include small groups or low intensity interventions. Tier 3 students are those who require more intensive and more individualized supports to ensure that they are succeeding academically and or behaviorally. So when we consider instructional choice, this is a low intensity strategy. And if we go off of the definitions of the tiered students and what those tiers mean, then ideally instructional choice would benefit those at tier 2 instruction, because those are the students who require that little bit extra support and a little bit of small or low intensity interventions in the classroom. And this is exactly what this is. Instructional choice is a low intensity intervention. So when we consider the students who benefit the most from this, it would be those tier 2 students. However, This is an instructional strategy that you can use with all students in the classroom. I want you to think for a moment. Why would this benefit students at Tier 2? Why would those students who need a little bit extra support, why would this be beneficial for them? I want you to think about a time when you had a student that wasn't succeeding in the way that most students do. Someone that has struggled academically or behaviorally. And I want you to think about some of the strategies that you've been asked to implement. Maybe you've been asked to do a behavior chart. Maybe you've been asked to do progress monitoring. Maybe you've been asked to take anecdotal notes. These are all things that you might have been asked to do. Maybe you've been told to do the if-then strategy. If you work for 5 minutes, then you can take a lap for a minute, or you can play on your computer for 5 minutes. There are a lot of different things or different strategies that can be implemented into the classroom. However, sometimes as teachers, we feel that they require too much time, right? Or it just is another thing that we have to do. Instructional choice is something that's easy to implement. It's not something that's going to take too much effort or too much time away from your instruction. So, with instructional choices, this is called a low intensity strategy. A low intensity strategy is a strategy that can be implemented easily, using low effort, doesn't require a lot of effort, and are research based. They can be easily integrated into the instruction in a range of different classroom settings and student demographics. So it's not just a self-contained setting, it's not just a gen ed classroom. This is a strategy that is low intensity, meaning that it doesn't require much effort on the part of the teacher, and it is research based. This can be implemented in any classroom, and a lot of times instructional choice does become a second nature to some teachers. So, we are going to continue to discuss this low intensity strategy and what it might look like in the classroom for our students. On the prior slide, we discussed how Tier 2 students are those 10 to 15% of students who just need a little bit extra support. These are the students who benefit from low intensity strategies. There are a multitude of low intensity strategies that do not require 1, extensive training, 2, a lot of effort from the teacher, or 3, a lot of implementation time. These are the strategies that we use in the classroom just to support those students a little bit more than the Tier 1 students. However, they don't require much on the part of the teacher. There are a lot of benefits of these low intensity strategies for students. It could increase student engagement. It could positively impact student academics or behavioral achievement. Some examples of low intensity strategies include scaffolding independent work, peer tutoring, increasing opportunities to respond, behavior specific praise, and even instructional choice. These are all examples of strategies that we can implement in our classroom as teachers without having to put too much effort into the strategy. Now that we've had the time to consider which students would benefit most from instructional choices, I want us to watch a video of how choice making actually looks in the elementary school classroom. In this video is a teacher named Mrs. D, and she is going to show us an example and a non-example of what choice making looks like in the classroom setting. While you're watching this video, I want you to jot down some notes about the following questions. What were the options that Mrs. D presented? What was the outcome of each option? How did the students respond to the choices that were presented? And how did Mrs. D use choice incorrectly? While it seems simple in nature of how to produce choice making in the classroom, there are some ways that we do it that are not as effective as other ways of implementing that strategy. So watch this video, take the time to jot down some notes, and I want you to think about the difference between the example and the non-example. And I want you to be ready to discuss with your table mates. As we have previously learned, instructional choice can and does vary between classrooms. It can vary in the severity or the appearance that happens within each classroom. There are two different forms or two different main forms of instructional choice. The two different forms are across activity versus within activity. Across activity instructional choices are those choices that students make about which activity or task they want to engage in. For example, does a student want to engage in a math activity where they're coloring? Do they want to engage in a math activity where they're writing on a whiteboard? Do they want to engage in a math activity where they are, let's say, solving a mystery? These are all different activities that can be used to engage in the same kind of content, but they're not the same exact activity. This is called a cross activity. So they're deciding which activity or task they want to engage in to learn that standard. Then you have within activity. These are those choices that students make about how to engage in the task. Does the student want to write his vocabulary terms using a pen? Does he want to write them using a marker or a pencil? Maybe he wants to do ghost writing. Maybe he wants to type them. These are all ways where students are engaging in the same activity, but the way they do the activity might be different. As previously stated, within activity instructional choices are those choices where students have to make decisions about how to engage within an activity, you have taught, such as working alone or with a peer. Step 2, you're going to look at the assignments for that problems or the odd problems. You are then going to decide on these are 5 different tasks that your students of how you can take the same activity and then you're going to create a within activity choice for how each of those 5 assignments. I want you to give you about some other within activity instructional choices you could make. I will give you more time maybe if it is decided that you need it. Could allow students to ghostwrite. Maybe you could allow students to write with a pen or a marker. You maybe work with a going to find a independent study. Find a unit that you have taught on or paper or on the computer. Step 2, you're going to look at the assignments for that unit. Now that you've had the opportunity to create some within activity instructional choices, we are now going to look at creating some across activity choices. An across activity instructional choice is when students have to make choices about the type of activity to engage in, such as choosing the order in which the student completes a task or even the learning center. So one might decide to color a picture, one might decide to read about it, one might decide to perform, one might decide to draw. There are many different tasks that students can complete to learn the same standard. So this is when you create activities that are not the same exact activity, but they do allow the students to learn that AKS. It allows them to learn that learning target, that standard, just in a different way, just a different task. Do they want to use boom cards? Do they want to work on the computer? Do they want to build a base 10 robot? It's all based on the same standards. It's just different activities for that standard. You are now going to use those same 5 tasks as before, and you are going to create some across activity choices for each of the assignments. Now that we've had the opportunity to engage in conversation and work time about instructional choices and what those look like in our classroom, I now want to talk about the effectiveness. Through research studies conducted, it has been seen that instructional choice has been beneficial for students at risk for EBD, general education students, and students with learning disabilities. It has been seen that there is a decrease in challenging behaviors, an increase in on-task behaviors, and an increase in overall engagement. Now, despite the wonderful outcomes and the effectiveness of this strategy, there have been many barriers noted as to why one might not engage in this strategy in the classroom. Some have said that they have too strict of a curriculum or scripted curriculum. Some have said there's a lack of time, a lack of preparation time. They need support from admin. They don't have it. They need all students to engage in the same task. They don't have time for students to be making choices. What are some other barriers that you might think of that we might have when trying to implement instructional choice? Not only do I want you to think about what other barriers there might be, but I want you to try to think of some strategies or some ways that we can overcome those barriers. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to turn and talk with your table mates and discuss this question. Now you are going to have the opportunity to work with a partner or a group to answer the following question. How does providing options help with non-preferred tasks? How did having options help you whenever you did not want to do a task? You are going to write a song or create a rap to help sum up your thoughts. How can these options help us when there's something that we don't want to do? You have the choice of working with a partner, you can work with a group, or you can work independently. We are now going to have the opportunity to engage in the first 3 steps of this process. We are going to create a choice board based on the unit that we worked with previously. You have to ask yourself, are you comfortable with across-activity choices, within activity choices, or both? One of the ways that then we are going to create a menu of options for that curricular unit. Is through creating choice and then we are going to add those choices that we created on the menu to specific lessons within that unit of study. Great. So I see some people have implemented them. I see we some are now going to have the opportunity to engage in the first 3 steps of this process. Step-by-step process. We are going to create a choice board based on the unit that we worked with previously. You have to ask yourself, step that you are you comfortable is determining the choices that you are choices offering within activity choices or both. Then we are going to create a menu of options for that curricular unit. Activity choices, and then we are going to add those choices that we created on the menu to specific lessons within that unit of study. Where they're not doing the same task, but they're learning the same. We are now going to have the opportunity to engage in the first 3 steps of this process. Activity choices, we are going to create a choice board based on the unit that we worked with previously. You have to ask yourself, are you comfortable with across-activity choices, within activity choices, or both? You're going to find your unit that you want to create a menu of options for that curricular unit. And then we're going to add those choices that we created some of the activities that they could do within or some of the different ways that they can do the activities already in the unit. We are now going to have the opportunity once you've come up with your menu of choices, steps of this you are then going to use that we are going to create a choice board based on the unit that we worked with previously. Not all choices you have to ask yourself, are you going to align to every single activity choices? So you want to within activity choices or choices for each then we are going to create a menu of options for that curricular because unit. If you don't have two, and then we are going to add those choices that we created on the menu to specific lessons within. So you're going to have at least 2 choices for each lesson that we are now going to have the opportunity to engage in the first 3 steps in a unit is going to have choices. We are going to create a choice board based on the unit that we worked with previously. Okay. You have to ask yourself, once you have created those choices with across-activity choices, within activity choices, you are going to offer those choices to students. Then we are going to create a menu of options for that curricular unit. You don't want to persuade students those choices that we created on the menu to specific lessons or a specific way of doing the task. You want it to be the student's choice. We don't want them to choose an activity engage in the first or a way of doing the activity based on what we are going to create a choice board based on the unit that we worked with. You are going to provide students with a wait time for them to make the choice. Are you comfortable with across-activity choices? Within activity choices, say the choice, you are going to listen and observe we are going to create a menu of options for that ensure that you understand the choice that they make. And then we are going to add those once you understand that the choice that they made, you are going to reinforce the choice by providing that choice to the students and allowing them to engage in the activity or within to engage in the activity and the way they want to do that activity. We are going to create a choice board based on the unit that we worked with of this strategy. You are then going to ask yourself feedback. Are you comfortable? Maybe consider asking the students what activities they like within activity choices, whether they enjoyed the instructional choice. Then we are going to create a menu of options for that so that next time you can make it even better for the next unit those choices that we created on the menu. Let's begin with step 1. We have to decide, are we comfortable with a cross activity, within activity, or both when regarding instructional choice? As a teacher myself, I am comfortable with both and I like to provide both on my choice menu. Things such as letting the kids choose between writing with a pen or a marker, letting kids decide between writing a song and singing it or presenting a presentation. Maybe the presentation is a Google Slides or a Prezi. I am all about allowing the students to choose the ways they engage in the task and the task that they engage in. What is your preference? Go ahead and jot down whether you would want to do a cross activity instructional choices, within activity instructional choices, or both. Step 2 is to actually create the menu of options. So your menu of options can include things that are across activity or things that are within activity. I chose both, so I'm going to create 6 different activities considering those different types of instructional choices. The unit that I am working with is representing numbers in multiple different ways for 3-digit numbers. This includes expanded form, standard form, written form, base 10 language, and base 10 models. So some of the activities that I might include on my choice menu are the following. Right here, they have to fill out this chart. Do they want to fill out the chart using ghostwriting, where they write it in a white crayon and then they color over it with a marker? Or do they want to use the graphic organizer, where it's put in this sheet protector and then they write on it with Expo marker? Do they want to do a base 10 robot? They can do the base 10 robot using manipulatives, or they can use or make a base 10 robot by using grid paper and cutting it out and putting it on construction paper. Do they want to do a base 10 building, an infrastructure? They can do the same thing with grid paper or with the actual manipulatives. Do they want to represent numbers in multiple ways using boom cards on a digital platform? Do they want to represent numbers in multiple ways using an anchor chart, making a poster? These are all different options that I would present to my students for this instructional unit. I want you to take the time. I'm going to give you about 15 minutes, and I want you to come up with about 6 to 10 different options that your students could engage in for a unit of your choosing, preferably the unit that you already have been working on. Now that we have created our own choice boards or choice menus, we are going to take those options or choices listed within that menu and add specific choices to specific lessons. So, for example, in my choice board, I did ghostwriting and a graphic organizer and marker. Those are great options that could go with lesson 1 of this unit. So, on the first day, we're really using this graphic organizer to engage in representing the numbers in multiple different ways. Since this is something that the students will have done in the lesson, this is something that they could easily choose between. This is an example of a within activity option where they're doing the same task, they're just doing it in different ways. They're choosing how they engage in it. For lesson 2, I chose to do the boom cards or the make a poster for the place value representations. This is a great choice or choices for this lesson because students have had a little bit more experience. They don't really need the graphic organizer anymore, and they get to be creative or engage in digital platforms. Moving forward, I would have the students engage in the robot factory or the robot using base 10 blocks. This is the ways that I would break these options down into the specific lessons within the unit. I want you to take your choice menu and I want you to assign the specific choices to lessons that those choices align with. Remember that you need 2 different choices for each lesson that you do, or it doesn't continue to be a choice. You will have about 15 minutes to do this, and I will provide more time if I see that we need it. You have learned a lot of information in this professional development session. Now, we couldn't get to every single step of the process for implementing instructional choice. However, you have gained a great start to this experience. As we move beyond this professional development, I challenge you to engage in the following steps. 1, I want you to go ahead and implement that choice menu or choice board into your classroom. Then I want you to reflect on the experience. What worked? What didn't work? Once you've done that, I want you to take that reflection and try to do the next unit, but make it better. What didn't work for you? What did work for you? How can you fix that moving forward? These are the things that I challenge you to do, and I hope that you attend future professional developments on instructional choices as well. As we just discussed the next steps, I want you to think about what one new thing is that you learned that you will take with you to your classroom. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to turn and talk with your elbow partner. What is something that you can take with you? What is something you found super valuable in this session? I know there was a lot presented today, but I want you to think of just one thing that you can try to do in your classroom. Maybe it's a cross activity instructional strategies. Maybe it's, not a choice board, but just providing students within activity choices such as, hey, do you want to write with a pen? Do you want to write with a pencil? What can you try to bring into your classroom after this professional development? Go ahead and turn and talk. So I would allow 2 minutes to pass, and then I would ask, can we add to our Mentimeter? Before, in the beginning of the session, we did a Mentimeter to add words about what instructional choices do we already use. I want you to go back and add some instructional choices that you learned about today that maybe you didn't see on the board. This way, this can be referenced back for you to refer to if you're ever wondering what are the options? What are some things that you can do in your classroom to provide choices? Please go ahead and take the time to do this. This will wrap up our session. When you are done with this QR code, please go ahead and gather your things and you are good to go. It was great meeting with you all, and I hope that you learned a lot of valuable information today.